All right, everybody. Welcome to the Red Pill Nation Hangout number 314. This is actually kind of a special episode because this is the first one that I'm going to be doing on my own. There is no co-host, no chair. Rearson is not in tonight, and nobody else seems to be available. Sean McGuire, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning when I called him in Ireland. So, yeah. Good luck with that. So, yeah, it's just me, myself, and I. The show's going to come across as maybe a little bit different, and you may see more of this as I'm going along. I'm going to actually start out. Now, again, you probably noticed this right at the start. There is no Patreon pitch this time. Yeah, I have only one independent source of income coming in right now, and that is from either Patreon or Subscribestar. If only 1% of you actually gave $1 a month for me to help out, because I'm going, like I said, if you've listened to some of my content before, I'm going to be doing this whether I get paid or not. And I'm certainly willing to go to pay the price for doing this. Just, end of the day, I want to have a clear conscience when the SHIT literally and figuratively hits the fan. And don't make any mistake about it. The literal and proverbial shit is going to hit the fan at some point in time or another. If you don't think so, you are either really, really stupid, or you're being, at this point, given the amount of information that is currently out there. I mean, even if you're not connected to the net. Now, the information is out there, and you're being willfully ignorant, and you are choosing not to look. Now, what your reason for choosing not to look is not any of my business, but that's the situation. So, yeah, I am at Patreon, at least for now, as Neroke 5. I'm Subscribestar as the Red Pill Nation. For those of you who don't know where else I am not at YouTube anymore. I have decided I've had it up to here with that platform, and I don't need the aggravation, especially when I'm not going to go into all the details. I just don't need the aggravation, especially when there are clear and viable alternatives out there now that could do the job better than YouTube is able to now. For those of you who don't know, Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, MGTOW TV, of the major platforms, I am only on one, and that is Facebook. I'm also at MeWe, Minds, Gab. I'm at Parler. I am not at Parler. I am only at Getter. It's the only one of the major platforms that I am currently now on a regular basis is Facebook. I may eventually go back to Twitter, but I'm not sure. So, yeah, it is just me, myself, and I tonight. I promise not to get into a violent disagreement with myself. And, if I have... Apparently, my lisp is back, although I can't hear it. If the lisp is there, just let me know. I'll do something about it. I'm busy. I'm currently fighting a cold at the moment, so yeah, who knows what's causing it. The topics for tonight are as follows. Topic number 1, Lauren Southern has been exposed as a hypocrite, and Hunter Avalone is getting divorced. Topic number 2, which is the Hollywood Report, and we usually have a big, huge to-do about this, but again, it's just me tonight. There's 3 topics. Mel Gibson financially backing a documentary supporting human trafficking. B, Little Mermaid is officially tanking. And C, things are not looking good for Indiana Jones. Topic number 3, Twitch changes ad guidelines on its site, causing people to leave. Topic number 4, Activision bans NicMercs Pac after Nic Says leave the children alone against Activision. Back against Activision. Leave the children alone. The kickback against Activision has been harsh. Topic number 5, Danielle Smith calls through the investigation into Alberta Forest Fires. And topic number 6, well, Trump has been indicted again. And yeah, the circus continues. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, not really sure how this is going to go tonight because I'm doing an entirely different format. I may, it may be shorter, it may be longer. You're going to see a lot more corroborating video on this than you normally see on this. And it is just going to be me. And I could extend this out longer than I normally would. But you know what? I may do that to a certain degree, but I don't want things to get dragged out just for the sake of dragging things out. So with that, let's just get into topic number 1. Okay, topic number 1. Lauren Southern and Hunter Avalone. I'm going to start with Hunter Avalone because Hunter Avalone is not going to take as much time as, say, as much time as, say, Lauren Southern. Hunter Avalone he reminds me a lot of Ian Miles Chong, except in the case of Hunter Avalone went over to the left and sold everything out on the left side, on the conservative side, to go over. And I mean, I will get into it, but I mean, he's effectively getting divorced at this point. Now, Hunter Avalone, I remember him as a conservative YouTuber a few years ago, and I mean, while I was never really a particular fan of Hunter Avalone, I thought he had some decent things to say. But I mean, like I said, I was never what you call an outright fan of Hunter Avalone. I didn't follow him religiously. I didn't listen to his stuff religiously. And nor, again, I will go through phases where I will listen to somebody's stuff a lot, and then I will just get tired of them and I will move on to someone else for a while. That's just the way I roll. And then occasionally I will check in with them later on to see how they're doing or not doing. Well, what happened with Hunter Avalone? Hunter Avalone he's a larger YouTuber. He doesn't have 1 million subs on YouTube, but he's got over 100,000. Now, this is the reason why I wanted to start with this. This, guys, is what happens to a person when, again, you'll have to excuse the MGTOW in me coming out here to say this. This is what happens when you sell out for pussy consistently all the time. Destiny is effectively doing the same sort of thing right now with Andrew Tate, but that's for another discussion down the road. Hunter Avalone fell in love with a woman who happened to be, well, let's just say she's on the left side. Hunter Avalone. And keep in mind, this was a few years ago before the manosphere had really kicked in, and I remember hearing things about Hunter Avalone a few years ago about how he had sold out. And I mean, it happens. And for the guys in the manosphere that are listening to this is not the worst case of selling out for pussy. This is all, I mean, from where I'm setting it forth, what the limited, and I'm going to have to say limited knowledge of what I know about Hunter Avalone now, it appears as though that is exactly what he did. Well, yeah, he had a kid with her. I mean, I think he may even had 2. I don't know the exact specific details, but they're getting a divorce. Statistically speaking, I do believe it was his wife that put in for it. Here's the situation. And Hunter Avalone's going to get a very rough ride. I don't think he's going to get as rough a ride as Jian Ghomeshi, but he's going to find out the hard way, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure that when he decided to turn his back on his original audience, that there were guys in the manosphere who were telling him back then, right? This, I'll see you in a few years, wait and see what happens. Well, Hunter, you're going to find out what happened. You're going to find out, okay? Now, it may not be as bad as, say, what Steve Crowder is going through, but yeah, you sold out your audience for a woman who chose to divorce you for, I don't know what the specific reasons are, and I really don't care. From what little I've seen of you in the past few years, you know, you didn't just sell out. I mean, you totally went the opposite way. And you went that opposite way knowing what the left is currently like. But you went there anyway. And it's fairly obvious you went there over pussy. Well, you know what, Hunter? Yeah, you sold out for it. You did it because you wanted to be with her. Blah, 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 blah. And, well, guess what? Now you're going to get divorced. Now that whole part that you hear from the manosphere about losing half your stuff and about her trying to make claims on the work that you've done and all of that other stuff, which I know, I am reasonably certain that you've been told about, even though, you know, you've been making attempts to block comments on your Twitter account about this. All the stuff that you got told about over the past few years about selling out. Well, congratulations, Hunter. More than likely, you're going to find out. You might be one of the lucky ones, and the divorce might be amicable. But that's not going to mean anything. It's still going to be painful. And the divorce lawyers, because there is both money and kids involved, you know, unless you know what you're doing, and of course, you don't know what you're doing, because you probably ignored legitimate advice coming from guys in the manosphere, because, well, you know, you loved her. Well, you know, sorry, you know what, Hunter? You're going to sell out for pussy. This is what's going to happen. And yeah, I don't really particularly care if you get pissed off at me for accusing you of this, because that's exactly what you did. Congratulations, Hunter. If you're lucky, you'll only lose half your stuff. And hopefully, maybe you'll be smart enough to do a little bit of research and understand that you don't necessarily have to take the deal that the divorce attorneys throw in front of you. But you know what? Given the insulting nature of your channel in the last few years, I really don't feel like giving you any legal advice or any legal support. You know, I want you to fucking feel it. You know, I have very little respect for an individual who sells out just to keep getting fucking laid. I mean, honestly, dude, I'm sure there's been nights in the last few weeks where where it's crossed your fucking mind. Was it fucking worth it? Well, I got my kids and I'm married and blah, blah. Well, you don't have your fucking kids anymore, dude. You got half custody of your kids and you're not fucking married anymore, right? Like, you got nothing. You know, like Undead Chronic was more than justified in having a celebration of what happened to you. You actually use those facts to try to justify being morally superior to Undead Chronic, when in fact you're not. You were never even close. So, yeah, stew in it, suck in it, and I really, it's not very often that, even with, for instance, and I understand that Crowder was probably potentially a bit of a tyrant and an abuser, but Crowder didn't sell out for pussy. He was just maybe a little bit naive, and he's got that tradcon approach to marriage and relationships with women, which is not a very good approach to have anymore. You knowingly did what you did just to be with a fucking woman. And then you use that fact to rub it in the face of guys in the manosphere, and now you're dealing with the consequences. So fucking deal with them. And at least from me, fuck you very much. Now, though, let's get into the big topic for tonight. I don't have to say probably the biggest, potentially, at least for me personally, the biggest news story of this week on a personal level, and that is Lauren Southern being exposed. Now, Lauren Southern did a video called The Last 5 Years, where she went into her personal life and all her personal details over the last few years. Now, Lauren Southern has done some decent work in the past. For instance, had she not done the work that she did on the Kamloops residential school, I would not necessarily know, for instance, that there had been no autopsies done on any of the bodies, nor have they exhumed any of the bodies at the Kamloops school, but they demanded a whole bunch of equity and racial justice, cancellations of Canada Day, etc., over this topic, over that issue. And Lauren Southern kind of helped me bring stuff around. She did a decent documentary on what was going on in South Africa. But, even back at that point, and again, right, like the first time I seriously heard of Lauren Southern was when she was actually in the town I live in Edmonton. And she got, I don't know who invited her up here for the slut walk back in 2015. Now, on this particular slut walk, I couldn't make it that day because I actually had a personal anniversary that I had to go to on that particular day, literally on the day of the slut walk. And I just simply couldn't make it. And it was a very important event. I would have loved to have been there. I would have loved to have met her. She did an interview with that MGTOW guy, with the Walking Away man, who I've got an interview with on my channel. She also did an interview with Nick Redding. She interviewed some of the people of Slut Walk. It's not a coincidence that when they started giving the Slut Walk the exposure that they did, that the Slut Walks lost a lot of their legitimacy, which wasn't that big of a surprise. Now, what she did from there, she was working for Rebel, and then it ended at Rebel. I don't know the story of what happened at Rebel, but cracks started to appear almost immediately. I don't know the whole details of what happened, but the crew that she hired for that South African documentary, again, correct me if I'm wrong on this because I don't know the full details of it. She inadvertently potentially could have gotten Gavin McGuinness in trouble because she hired a bunch of people who at least tangentially work on the woke side. Now, I never saw her South African documentary. I am aware of some of the stuff that's going on in South Africa. So I'm not going to give any commentary on the documentary itself. Now, the thing that I specifically remember is that she did a tour down in Australia and New Zealand with Stefan Molyneux, and then after she finished that, she kind of disappeared for a few years. The stuff that I saw on her Instagram, she made a serious effort to hide the child's face, which I guess if you're a prominent celebrity, I mean, I can understand that. Now, what happened around that was apparently the far-right crowd became convinced that she's Jewish, and even after, and I mean, I actually know I don't regret defending her. She did a 23andMe, where she pretty much proved that she wasn't fully Danish. There was a lot of Spanish in her, and if you see her brown eyes and so on and so forth, that's actually believable. But she wasn't Jewish. The far right anti-Semitic Jew-hating crowd became absolutely and firmly convinced that Lauren Southern was Jewish. I have no skin in that game. I don't particularly like the anti-Semitic far-right crowd. Reasons why I don't like it is, one, it's like for instance, if you somehow disagree with them, you somehow magically become Jewish, and I'm definitely not Jewish. And they see this whole, and it's very clear that it's not just Jews behind everything, but it's sort of like, I mean, there's enough Jews fighting against this issue for there to be, it's sort of like, like, it's not fucking Mein Kampf, right? They're not all in on it, right? And it's not a Jewish conspiracy, and I mean, even the writer Behold a Pale Horse said, I mean, there probably are some Jews involved, but I mean, they're not the only faction, and even if they did, like at that level, they would likely be competing against other factions for control. So I mean, are there Jews involved? Yes. Are they the ones calling all the shots? No, they're not. I digress, though. That was just something that I ended up having to take Lauren's side over. I didn't take Lauren's side over that because I happen to be sympathetic to Jews. I do find that particular crowd to be kind of annoying and as dumb and as stupid as the far left is. Now, but here's the thing, right? She did promote, I won't say she was like openly racist or Aryan, because obviously she wasn't, because she married a guy of Oriental descent and had a child with him. But I mean, she was championing people of European heritage to have more kids because of what was going on in Europe, and to a lesser extent in North America, with the governments there importing immigrants from non-European countries to come in, and enough of them are coming in some places that they're potentially threatening to overwhelm the native population of these countries. France specifically comes to mind here. Championing people from their own ethnic countries having children of their own to protect their own native population does not make you a racist. It does not make you an Aryan. It does not make you a champion of white supremacy. Although apparently, because a lot of people on the far right, just like people on the far left, like to think with their dicks, they heard Lauren say stuff that she didn't actually say. Now, what does that mean in its entirety, though? Lauren disappeared for a while. And when I saw pictures of her on Instagram, there was a kid, and she was making very clear attempts to hide the photos. And it was like, oh, okay, just another hot, attractive blonde who got famous, ran into somebody, and, settled in, married them, decided to fade out of the limelight, and decided to basically go and be a mom full time. That's how it appeared to be. That is not what happened. Lauren came back to Canada. Her husband, in what I'm going to have to assume is a seriously cucked move, decided to come with her to Canada to help Lauren pursue his career, and he took a job that was much less rewarding for him personally, just to keep the family together. Obviously, this situation with his decline in income and whatever, the marriage obviously didn't work. He eventually, and he explained all of this to Rollo Tomasi recently, her personality and her need to be recognized and to be famous, and I'm going to have to say it straight out, narcissism, which, by the way, also will include a terminal inability to admit that she's wrong, probably was a major contributing factor for him going back to Australia. Now, she tried to go back to Australia to be with him, but surprise, surprise, Australia wouldn't let her back in, even though she was married to an Australian. So she had to come back to Canada with the kid, where she resumed her YouTube career and her internet broadcasting career. And this is around the time that she started getting into serious trouble. Her political stance suddenly stopped being conservative, and all of a sudden she was a centrist. One of the things that got her on the map initially was her involvement in the manosphere, and in the past few years she has threatened Sandman with legal action. She took a comment which may or may not have come from a MGTOW, but attempted to project out this rather toxic comment as something that all MGTOW hold, which is not true. And, I probably should have put two and two together on this. But what eventually happened, and this just happened, she's been doing some of it's been good, some of it hasn't been so good, and of course I listened to the whole thing between Undead Chronic and her, and she was drunk at the time, and I did notice that she did refuse to comment about her social situation at the time. There's also been some suspicious activity between both her and Destiny and her and Tim Pool. I don't know the whole details of that particular situation. There may or may not have potentially even be a kid involved with Destiny. Again, don't know the whole details, is there a kid involved? Yeah. Is Destiny the type of lecherous guy that would do something with Lawrence Southern? Yes, he would. Absolutely, yes, he would. My personal opinion is that Destiny's a bit of a worm and a bit of a slime bag, at least in my... And an intellectually, probably the worst type, a smart worm. A real... listening to his stuff is kind of like listening to academic feminists arguments so far. Again, I don't know the whole story with Destiny, and hopefully I never will have to interact with him because I really don't particularly like the guy. That being said, this is not about Destiny, but yeah, there is consistent stories going around of alleged her sleeping with various individuals and so on and so forth to get these positions, which, by the way, really shouldn't surprise me. Because, she wouldn't be the first woman to do it. Again, though, that would be just rampant speculation on my part. I don't know for sure. Now, the whole thing with with this. And the thing that finally did it is, I mean, she did this video called The Last 5 Years. And, of course, right, Undead Chronic. And by the way, when I talk about Undead Chronic, I mean, it's just because I've been listening to Undead Chronic quite a bit, because it's been like Christmas for Undead Chronic, and he did a teardown of this video, and he pointed out things like, like the way she refused to answer his questions and some of the stuff around Destiny and so forth, and Tim Pool. Now, the other guy, and this is weird because, I mean, I keep running into these same two people even though they don't like each other. Rollo Tomasi had Lauren's ex send him information about Lauren to him as a response because he wasn't really able to respond any other way. Now, is it Lauren's ex that sent the stuff to Rollo? I'm leaning on the side of yes. I don't know. I suspect that Rollo might. Rollo is not the type of person, because, like, I mean, you have the standards for people like Rollo have to be a step up from normal people, because if he would make a dishonest mistake like that and try to represent Laura, as in, say, Lauren's ex sent me all this info, I mean, he would have found himself in some really serious legal trouble. So, was it Lauren's ex that sent him this information? I'm leaning towards yes. Now, this is the part that really gets to me about Lauren Southern. And this is part of the reason why I really don't have a whole lot of respect for Lauren Southern anymore. Lauren Southern launched her journalism career by, I mean, the slut walk is the first thing that I remember her participating in. She interacted with multiple members of the manosphere, and as she was doing that, she was probably been told about stuff like parental alienation, false accusations, victim card. Definitely heard some stuff about MGTOWs, because MGTOWs do not have any hesitation to get blunt with women of any stripe. So Lauren Southern knew about all of this stuff, and I'm going to have to, I'm definitely going to have to give Rollo the benefit of the doubt here and assume that he's being truthful, again, because of certain standards and whatever, that, Lauren Southern is engaging in the types of behaviors that the manosphere, that she knows that the manosphere doesn't like. Parental alienation, false accusations, saying that she's not getting any child support, when the father of her child is clearly saying that he was more than willing to do that stuff, and that he has sent support to her in the past. The one that really stands out for me, though, in this particular situation, and with this video the last 5 years, is her playing the victim on this. She knows about the victim card. She may not have been explicitly told about it, but, I mean, any person, male or female, that has dealt with women in the past or has dealt with the manosphere before has been told about women playing the victim card. And she went out and she did it anyway. Let me emphasize that again. She knows about this, and she went out and she played it anyway. And here's the thing about this, too, is that along the way, she has also smeared a few other individuals. Shoe on Head, Lauren Chen, a few others. I mean, again, right, like, my respect for Shoe on Head has dropped off significantly, especially since I saw Shoe on Head endorsing this Christian feminist who was attempting to project the entire manosphere as just a bunch of perverted pedophiles, and she knowingly voted that person up. And I've seen Lauren Chen do some very thick, ignorant takes about the manosphere in the past, but again, right, this is, I saw a lot of people going in saying, yeah, you slay girl, and stuff like that. And ultimately, I'm thinking, what happened here? This was an attempt by Lauren to get ahead of the situation. Now, there's going to be the TradCon group, and they're the faction that has the most access to the mainstream, and she's going to know about, and they're going to try to create a narrative. And there's enough guys out there that aren't in the MGTOW sphere, that are either MRAs or PUAs, that, or even say MGTOWs right at the very start, who are still thinking with their dicks, that are just going to blindly believe women, even though MGTOW's been around long enough that you should know fucking better, right? I mean, I was just talking about Hunter Avalone at the start of this, and yeah, we're getting into this, and I'm like, yeah, like, this, from the manosphere perspective, this is what happens when you listen to your dick, when you follow your dick around, when you sell out for pussy, when you give up the farm over a pretty goddamn face. I saw guys knowingly and willingly simp out, and will likely continue to simp out for Lauren Southern. I just want to let you know that if you're one of those guys, understand I have very little respect for you anymore. Why the fuck are you even in the manosphere at this point? Like, seriously, why the fuck are you even here? Are you even remotely familiar with the concept of the victim card? Like, were you actually, when you were reading this stuff about victim card playing and all the games that women play, and false accusations, and parental alienation, and saying that you're not getting child support even though the husband says that he was quite willing to pay it, all that stuff, like, I mean, are you so stupid as to believe at this point, given the track record that Lauren has, that she is being entirely and completely truthful with you, specifically around any issue involving gender? If you are one of those guys, like, I mean, I really hate being rude about this, but if you're one of those guys, just fucking unfollow me. All right? Like, that's how little respect I have for someone like you. Okay? Like, I've spelled some stuff out. Her record speaks for itself. If you are not willing to see that, if you are not willing to accept what I'm telling you as the straight up truth, you're the problem, not me. And then, yeah, I hate to get so vicious with a woman like Lauren Southern, but I mean, we're not just talking like, say, Tommy Lahren making one video saying men are trash. Like, Lauren Southern has engaged in hypocrisy, in potential dishonesty, in a lot of narcissistic, self-serving action from the beginning. If there is a poster child out there right now for don't give up the farm, Lauren Southern is it. And I hate to say that. You know what? Yeah, I do. Because I still have a little bit of respect for some of the other work that Lauren Southern has done. But I mean, yeah. If you want to simp for Lauren Southern, just unsubscribe to my fucking channel. I don't even want to hear your story or your excuses or your opinion on how I look or how I'm being arrogant or anything like that. Because quite honestly, I'm MGTOW. I don't give a shit. And then with that, let's move on to the next story. So, welcome to the next section of this podcast. This is me talking. This is the Hollywood section. So what's in the Hollywood section? Mel Gibson financially backing a documentary exposing human trafficking, which this particular section of the video, Mel Gibson has been aware. Yeah, so Mel Gibson is familiar with a lot of the stuff that's gone on in Hollywood. Now, I remember a few years ago when he got caught up in a domestic abuse accusation. I remember listening to some of the recordings that were used, and they clearly looked doctored. There's accusations of anti-Semitism and involvement with groups that were critical of Jews and whatever. And it's like, I wasn't overly pleased with that. There are a significant number of people with Jewish persuasion working in Hollywood, but that's neither here nor there. At this point, given the degree and the degradation of what I have seen in Hollywood, and specifically their overlooking of Sam Smith and the issues around Balenciaga in particular, the whole situation with what's going on in Hollywood, and I don't even want to get into Disney and all of the wokeism stuff that's going on there, and the way they tried to smear. I mean, they didn't run Mel Gibson completely out of Hollywood, but I mean, they tried really, really hard to do exactly that with him. The whole situation is that, again, right, there has been, and I think this is a pretty fair statement when it comes to Hollywood, I am seeing a lot of willful ignorance and willful ignorance as to the pedophile problem that exists in LA, as well as all the stuff that happened, in particular with Harvey Weinstein, which again is a discussion for yet another day. The whole situation with what's going on is that Mel Gibson decided to financially back this group connected with Our Rescue, and I think I remember the name, Bill Elliott or whatever, and they were doing they were only going to do a short documentary about human trafficking, in particular in Ukraine, a place, by the way, and a situation that the mainstream media has been quite happy to ignore, just like they've been quite happy to ignore the stuff around the Azov Battalion, whom, by the way, are probably, by my speculation, probably quite willful participants in this situation that's going on there. The whole thing with that is that, I mean, when you start getting into human trafficking, and when you start seeing the and again, I have to be somewhat fair and balanced here, because my personal experience with individuals who I knew were pedophiles and how they acted and how they conducted themselves, these were very, the ones that I've come across in my time, a lot of them were really creepy right off the get-go. And when I mean they were really, so confronting them about, and the levels of denial and the justifications and whatever that I've seen or heard via YouTube or other podcasts or whatever, the level that these individuals will go to justify their actions is outstanding. Now, I'm going to point this out to somebody, because I've been accused of maybe reporting on this just a little bit too much. Now, I do find pedophilia repugnant. I do find it disgusting. And the individuals that I have encountered that I knew engaged in it were not individuals that around whom I would rather want to have any kind of an association with. That being said, the whole situation with pedophiles is that, I don't specifically go out looking for them. It might seem like I do, because there's a lot of topics around pedophilia and pedophiles in the Red Pill Nation Hangout. It's not that I go specifically looking for them. They just, every time I turn over a rock, in a lot of cases, specifically when it comes to Hollywood, which is an area that, I at one point wanted to make it big in. The creatures that come scuttling out from under the rocks whenever I lift them, pedophiles. And there's a big pedophile problem in Hollywood, and I do a lot of culture report. I do see a lot of overlooking of that type of thing. Look no further than what is currently going on with Ezra Miller and James Gunn. Now, my understanding around James Gunn is that he used to have a very drug-addled, drug-addicted past, which may explain some of his behavior and some of his jokes, but it doesn't cover all of it. And just because, to quote somebody from AA one time, and I've heard this a number of times over the years, what happens when you sober up a horse thief? You have a sober horse thief, right? That person still has to make a decision to not steal horses. So, James Gunn's behavior around Ezra Miller and a few others in as well. There was an individual quite recently, an actor who did get sent to jail for quite a while for raping somebody. But those tend to be the exceptions rather than the rule. And I am seeing a lot of willful overlooking of the human trafficking and the organ trafficking situation coming out of Hollywood. That is not a lie on my part. I see a lot of this. So, Redacted Television was pointing out that there may be, if I start seeing a smear campaign around Mel Gibson and around the production that he's involved in, and if they make a very conscious and specific effort to avoid mentioning what he's involved in, my respect for Hollywood, not that there's a whole lot of it left anymore, will go down even further. And that's really all I got to say on this one. I'm kind of I may download this and I may actually take a look at this particular topic. Again, I'm not a guy that goes around specifically looking for human traffickers and specifically goes around looking for pedophiles. They just have this bad habit of showing up whenever I'm doing this thing, especially when it becomes connected with Hollywood. And you need look no further than stuff like Mayfair and Balenciaga and what was going on with Ezra Miller to see that. Topic number 2. Little Mermaid. Now, we covered this in 312 last week, and at the time, The Little Mermaid had almost cleared its production budget in the first week, which was a fairly good sign. Or at least I thought it was a fairly good sign for them until I actually started breaking down the numbers. Now, the numbers, however, showed an entirely different thing. Once I started breaking down the numbers, then I did the internationals and blah, 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 blah. Little Mermaid is going to lose anywhere between $250 and $320 million. It may even tank worse than Buzz Lightyear, which I didn't think was humanly possible. Because again, right, that's between the two. Just those two shows by themselves, if The Little Mermaid is on track for what I'm thinking it's going to lose, that is $650 million between the two pictures, plus some of the other stuff that they potentially have lost money on this year, which is, I mean, I was just thinking about this morning. Why is it that Disney is being so consistent this year? Why is Disney almost burning money? To the point of like literal and absolute stupidity. I mean, Disney in particular has become the epitome of get woke, go broke. And if you take a look at the situation between Buzz Lightyear and The Little Mermaid, you'll see a lot of similarities. In the case of Buzz Lightyear, for instance, they reinserted a gay kiss because they wanted to own DeSantis, which was probably one of the stupidest things they could have done. They had there was diversity within Buzz Lightyear, which in of itself is fine, at least with me to a certain extent. But I mean, Disney at that time with that particular movie earlier this year chose to get themselves involved in a social issue which turned people off from Disney. In this particular case, one, they race swapped, which I'm really starting to lose patience for at this point. But you know what? I'm willing to indulge them. The computer animation wasn't particularly good. I'm going to be telling you, unlike Buzz Lightyear, I'm probably not going to go watch The Little Mermaid in theaters, which is a very rare thing for me to do. Because I'm a guy that will happily and willingly pretty much go and see anything. But I'm not going to be going to go see The Little Mermaid. Well, for one, they clearly have decided that it's not for a guy like me anyway, but I digress. Now, the other thing that comes up around this is again, and they consistently do this. Disney is notorious for doing this, but other studios in Hollywood will do this as well. They choose to insult their fan base. Again. Now, like I said, I was doing some thinking about this morning when I got up. And my own conclusion with what is going on around this particular issue is that, they are either insane via completely delusional and you can only burn so much of a corporation's money before they the thing about wokesters is, the same thing with socialism, to quote Margaret Thatcher, a woman, by the way, I didn't have a whole lot of respect for. Problem is that they're going to start running out of other people's money. Like, Disney is going to start to run out of money at some point. In fact, they already have engaged in some serious layoffs earlier this year. Not to mention all of the consistent line of arrests of individuals that come out of Disney for pedophilia. Again, I don't go around specifically looking for pedophiles. They just keep showing up when I look. All right? I don't go around hunting them, right? I'm not our rescue. But then, on top of it all, they go and they do the same thing that they do every single time. They insult their audience. They use the race card. They use the misogyny card. They pull all of this stuff out. And I mean, I've had arguments with individuals inside the film industry who just don't seem to get it. Right? Like, name a business where it is a good idea to insult your customers. My understanding with the entertainment business, which by the way is discretionary income, is that people go see you entertain them because they like to see you. They are willing to pay to see you. Yeah, you might be a great fucking musician or a great actor or a great director or whatever, right? You know, they go because they like to see your stuff, right? It doesn't matter how brilliant you are or whether you hate to face up to this fact or not. But I'm seeing this time and time again. Rampant ego, wokeism, whatever. It's not about how good you are. It's about how the audience feels about your product. Something I think that Hollywood is severely missing, and something that I think you're seeing again with The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid may or may not lose as much as Lightyear did, which is saying something, because the Lightyear movie, which by the way was not that bad, but I mean, yeah, the movie is gonna tank, and it is going to tank horrendously. And here's the thing, Disney is likely potentially gonna keep doing doing this particular thing as they go along. Now this is the only potential feasible explanation as to why it is they're gonna keep doing this. And I'm gonna be putting on my tinfoil hat here, courtesy of Tinfoil Hats R Us. Just remember, we've got all types of tinfoil hats, including ones for the family pets. Just remember to call into Tinfoil Hats R Us with operator and scream out, "They're not going to get me!" in order to get your 10% off your first order. The issue with this is that, I mean, they're choosing to willfully lose this money because at some point, you know, they're going to be the only game in town. This is going to be the only thing that you're going to be able to officially watch. That is the only other explanation that I can think of that fits. If you have a different theory as to why it is somebody's just I mean, it's either that or they are just insanely stupid. Stupid, insane, both, or they're keeping on doing this because they know at some point the economic system is going to be fixed up in a way that they're going to be the only game in town. That's really about the only thing that I can think of that would work in this particular situation. Now let's get on with, and by the way, this is also another franchise owned by Disney that has continuously, and Kathleen Kennedy has managed to kill off, basically she's done everything at this point to kill off everything that was owned by Lucasfilm except for Tomb Raider, and I fully expect that she's probably going to bring in, I don't know, maybe a 600-pound woman of color to play Lara Croft the next time around. You know, Viveka Davis or someone like that. Because, yeah, they obviously, Kathleen Kennedy obviously felt secure enough about Indiana Jones that she decided to premiere it at Cannes, and it didn't do well. The spoilers are out. It is very clear that Kathleen Kennedy has made an attempt to, once again, replace yet another male character with another female character, and she's not going to get that chance because based upon early early looks, it looks like this movie is also not going to do well. Not to mention the fact that Harrison Ford is, pushing 80? Like or maybe he's even over 80 at this point. Like, he's too old to be playing that character anymore. It's not looking particularly good. Like, is it going... Like, I mean, at this point, I mean, if you take a look at some of their other franchises this year, I mean, you got to take a look at Disney. And, like, is Disney literally going to lose $1 billion+ on its movie franchises again this year? Because, I don't know... Now, it is entirely possible that they did enough. I haven't seen it, and I will actually, unlike The Little Mermaid, I will actually probably go see the Indiana Jones movie, assuming it stays in theaters long enough for me to actually look at it. The Indiana Jones movie, I probably will make an effort to go see. Now, it is entirely possible, and again, I say this with a lot of movies, that, you know, Kathleen Kennedy might have caught lightning in a bottle. Anything connected with the film industry right now is suspect. You know, there have been situations where they were off. Captain Marvel, for instance, is a movie that comes to mind almost immediately. Here's the thing about Captain Marvel. Even though Captain Marvel topped $1 billion at the box office, they have been incredibly slow in bringing out the next Captain Marvel. You know, and at the time that Captain Marvel came out, there was some very, very suspicious ways that the ticket sales were going. And by the way, there was also that same sort of suspicious ticket sales going on with Star Wars, although not to the same degree, obviously. The situation with Indiana Jones is that this is a movie that never should have been made. I'm sure at the end of the day, when they are doing, I mean, if they give, they will probably give Kathleen Kennedy a star on the Walk of Fame, because that's just how Hollywood rolls at this point. Is there going to even be a legit Hollywood 10 years from now? I mean, if you can actually draw something good out of what happened from COVID, is that it accelerated the death of Hollywood at a much faster rate than it would have normally gone under. Kathleen Kennedy is eventually going to get removed, either forcibly, or the economics of the situation are going to happen, or they're going to have to sell off Lucasfilm, because Lucasfilm is no longer the cash cow that it once was. And the moment that Disney sells Lucasfilm off to another studio, Kathleen Kennedy's record will be exposed, and she will be gone. Kathleen Kennedy's not... The parting between Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm was not going to be good. Again, right... She injects her personal politics and her personal beliefs. And I mean, I even saw this with the original Jurassic Park. You know, the question here that I think needs to be asked around Disney in particular is Disney going to lose $1 billion this year? That's the ultimate question. What do you guys think? Okay, here we go. Topic number 3, Twitch. Okay, I'll be straight up with you. I have a Twitch account. I never use it. I never post anything up there. I've never been a big peruser of Twitch. My understanding is that it was primarily and mostly a gaming channel. It was also a bit of a gateway into stuff like OnlyFans and whatever, something that YouTube really didn't like or want to believe in. However, there are some very big channels over there on Twitch. I don't get involved in it. I don't look into it very much. I don't participate very much. The revenue model is different. I've covered some stuff around Dr. Disrespect, but again, Twitch is not my thing. So this is going to be actually a fairly short section. But I mean, I am noticing a trend because next week we're going to be covering, because Reddit is also doing the same thing. there is a very strong tendency, and again, I suspect this ties into Get Woke, Go Broke. The issue here is that all Twitch, YouTube, Reddit, some of these other places, they are doing everything they can to maximize their revenues coming in at the cost of their content creators. Now, in this particular case, the situation here involved the ad guidelines on its site. And, you know, obviously, I mean, the individual, like, I, again, not familiar with Twitch enough to actually know all the ins and outs of what is going on over at Twitch. I do know that it tends, from what I've seen, it tends to be a little bit more ad heavy. Like, there are ads inserted onto the screen and whatever. And, you know, on YouTube, and I specifically have on my laptop, I specifically, on both of my laptops, I have an ad blocker. I also have a demainstreamer on my laptops. I've tried to get stuff for my phone. The one time I did get something for my phone, the individual changed, the app changed their guidelines, and they decided that they wanted to start charging me. So I had to drop it, and I have not been able to find a decent ad blocker on my phone for YouTube ever since. Now, that being said, I mean, yeah, I find ads particularly annoying. I am fully aware as a content creator out there that I am going to probably have to play that game at some point myself. I'm going to probably take the Charlie Robinson approach, and I will only take ads that are consistent with my personal beliefs. I personally find the extent to which, although I enjoy Jeremy Hembling's content on the Quartering, I find that he sometimes tends to go overboard with the ads. And he has what he believes is a justifiable reason for it. For me, it's sort of like, yeah, no, dude. Like, I mean, I have seen stuff on the Quartering where it's been nothing but commercial, right? And it is annoying. You know, the company, Twitch, because YouTube's been doing the same thing, only in a different way. Twitch wants to get some more control over the revenue that they generate. They want to generate more. Now, YouTube has a different way to do it. I don't know how the system works over at Twitch. I am not particularly concerned about it. But Twitch is choosing to go... And yeah, they're effectively doing the same thing as YouTube is, except they're doing it in a slightly different form. And much like what happened with me with YouTube, I mean, I can honestly see why individuals are going to get sick of Twitch and decide to up and leave, which is exactly what some of them threatened to do when this came down. Now, I believe Twitch maybe asked some of these people to stay because they need the eyeballs. But I mean, yeah, there is a balance that has to be struck with the company and the website and the well, I mean, I'm gonna put Twitch and YouTube in a category of publishers because they do curate their content. Twitch is not quite as bad as YouTube, but they do curate their content. So I view personally both Twitch and YouTube as video publishers and not video platforms. And, you know, I understand that they need to max out the revenue. I understand they've got things like overhead. I understand they have to stay ahead of the video. Like, they have to keep putting in more and more and more memory. And they have to have moderators, etc., etc. And they've got a bunch of issues that they have to look out for. And they're also dealing with wokesters and the woke media and the government and yada yada and all of that stuff. I totally get that. And they have to make sure that as a business, they remain viable. And I will give them credit. They do seem to be a lot more aware, financially aware of their business models, as to not, at least at this point, scare away their biggest content producers because they want to be woke or they want to follow an agenda. That might change down the road, but it's not happening right now. And these particular video publishers, they want to max out. The only problem is, again, if you're going to do that and you're making your money off your independent content producers, you're going to end up, you have to strike a balance. You do. And that balance has to be in the name of independent content creators. And again, I understand the mainstream media, and I understand Hollywood and whatever, they want the publicity, and they want the money, and they want the soft power all to themselves, and have exerted significant pressure on both Twitch and YouTube in an attempt to try to corral that power so that they can have it all for themselves. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's working. There is going to eventually be a documentary or a movie or a TV series that is going to be shot that's not going to run on YouTube, it's not going to run on Twitch, it's going to run, or there's going to be independent content on some of these on Rumble or Odyssey or BitChute or maybe even MGTOW TV, where they're not censoring people, where people are gradually waking up. They understand that they don't have to stay on Twitch or YouTube. They can go see this content elsewhere. In fact, people are beginning to figure that out, and they are starting to go elsewhere. And it creates a feedback loop. They censor content. They censor content producers that don't agree with their social or political or cultural or economic stands. These people get booted off YouTube. They go elsewhere. And every time one of these content producers goes elsewhere, a certain percentage of the audience goes with them. Or you get a guy like, say, The Quartering, who promotes his content with Rumble and BitChute and Odyssey on his YouTube channel and encourages you to go over and look. And, it's reached the point now, in particular with both Rumble and Odyssey, in particular, where it's not just people that are getting booted off of YouTube that are going there now. Like, people understand that if they want to build their audience, specifically with Rumble and Odyssey, that they have to have their content up at those channels if they want to build them. Yeah, okay, it's not as large as YouTube, but you're starting to see live streams on Rumble where you are getting hundreds of thousands of people watching. That's powerful. That is a significant signal to both YouTube and to Hollywood and to the mainstream media that they don't have the soft power anymore. And it is really only a matter of time. I mean, even with BlackRock, even with ESG, it is really only a matter of time before one or two of these corporations just decides to go, you know what? I'm going to go over. I'm going to have people promote my stuff, my product, at Rumble and Odyssey, maybe even BitChute. Now, I don't have to do what Larry Fink over at BlackRock tells me I need to do. Like, your woke stuff isn't working. It's backfiring. And I will get into that later on this particular show. But I mean, what you're seeing here is an attempt and this is the same attempt that YouTube is doing, an attempt to corral and control more of their income at the cost of their independent producers. The only thing is, though, is with the internet, that the independent producers can go pretty much wherever the hell they want to. And unless they find a way of completely restructuring the internet. And if they do, I mean, the whole thing behind the internet, otherwise known as the ARPANET, is that it was designed in such a way so that there really isn't I mean, you can't turn off the internet. There is apparently a switch somewhere on a base somewhere in the eastern U.S. where somebody could probably shut off a significant portion of the internet if they so chose to. I don't think it would happen. The devastation to both businesses and the economy and communications would be chaotic and destructive. But their attempts to try to control or corral this and their revenue, I just don't think it's going to work, because again, you're dealing with a bunch of egos, present company included, that understand that, I mean, if they don't agree with what you're doing, I mean, there are options out there. They will take their dog and pony, and they will take their money, and they will take their business, and they will go elsewhere, which is exactly what's going to happen, which is the mistake that Twitch did. Remember, OnlyFans tried this once. They actually tried to eliminate the adult content off their platform. It didn't go well with them, right? They found out that that's where they were making most of their money, so they actually had to keep the adult content there and take the hit. Rumble and Odyssey and BitChute are probably going to have to become, well, they're going to have to probably put in some restrictions at some point. I mean, they already do have some restrictions, but I mean, you know, all three of the CEOs of those companies are aware of the censorious nature of the mainstream of Silicon Valley. And here's the thing, right? Just like Hollywood, just like New York with the media, you do not have to go down to California or San Francisco or New York to make a name for yourself anymore. But you know what? Let's hear what you have to say. Okay, topic number 4. Let's talk about, I mean, initially when I posted this up, I was going to be doing pushback because there's been a number of companies, Nike, you know, Frosted Flakes, a few others that have jumped on board. Hey, keep in mind it is Pride Month, so I mean you're gonna see a little bit of that happen irregardless. Now, at the start of the year, and we're specifically talking about, I decided instead I was gonna cover the NicMercs Activision fiasco instead of trying to cover all of these other companies. And I mean, I will eventually talk about ESG and BlackRock and Vanguard and Fleet Street and all of those others. I will get around to covering that particular topic in regards to this at one point. But what has been going on, and this was something that was discussed at the start of the year when they were making predictions about 2023, that you were going to start to see, because you mean you saw early rumblings of it in 2022, transgenders, pushing of gay agenda, the arrival of libs of TikTok, etc., right? Like, you saw all of that stuff arrive on the scene when it came to grooming, the way Twitter actually at one point tried to ban Twitter did ban OK Groomer, and it stayed in place for most of 2022 until Elon officially bought Twitter and then started to run Twitter. The whole situation was this particular group has they kind of reached their I think they kind of reached their heyday at the end of during the summer, in June, July of 2022, and they've been gradually losing ground ever since, right? Twitter doesn't have their back, and because Twitter doesn't have their back, YouTube and Facebook can censor all they want. You know, it doesn't matter, because if anybody because, like, I mean, it used to be, for instance, on Twitter that if you attacked if you attacked the trans community on Twitter, you would get an immediate ban. That doesn't happen anymore. There is a much freer exchange and a very hostile exchange that is taking place on Twitter. Twitter is a much more, I'm going to have to say, dynamic place now because of it. And here's the thing. Because Twitter is not running block for the trans community anymore, that limits their ability to control the narrative. Now, I mean, if you were to look at what is going on social media, you would think that the trans community was a significantly large swath of the population in the West, and they're not. They're less than 1%. In fact, I think they're maybe 0.8% of the actual population. Yet their agenda is being pushed and forced upon people who really don't even want to be involved in it. And the part that really has upset people, and I don't have kids, but I understand where they're coming from, is the way that they're somehow demanding access to other people's children. I am going to say this right now. The fact that I don't have kids. I really don't, and because I don't have kids and I know how they act and whatnot, I mean, I prefer to not be around them. You know? The fact that people with no kids and that really cannot reproduce, and don't try to pull that bullshit that trans men can get pregnant because men who were born biologically female and still have their uterus get pregnant and are transitioning into men, therefore men can get pregnant. Like, don't even try that fucking bullshit with me, because it ain't gonna fly. Alright? If we were to take this person's skeleton and take a look at it after they're dead, it would be male or female. If I took their DNA, it would be male or female in the overwhelming amount of cases. So don't even try and go there. Now, there has been a push by the trans community to get access to other people's children. A lot of this is being done by the Pritzkers, if you want to believe what I read on the 11th Hour blog. And this is kind of strange, because the 11th Hour blog is a feminist site. And I have very little to do with feminism. Although I have noticed that feminism has not really been defending women in a situation where you actually have biological males taking away opportunities from biological females. But I digress. Now, the protests are starting to get nasty. The protests are starting to get loud and vociferous. And here's the thing. Ultimately, at some point, the establishment is going to have to fold their tent, and they're going to have to know. And I mean, this has been brought to their attention now because of what has happened with Bud Light and what has happened with Target and what is happening with other companies that are facing backlash over this. Like, they're suddenly starting to realize what side their bread is buttered on. And you have companies attempting to and you're starting to see companies back out, and you know, this group has become so toxic that even the LGTB, the lesbians, the gays, the actual transgenders, the bisexuals, you know. Those individuals, I mean, they're getting so offensive, they're getting so pushy, and they're getting so demanding that they're actually even turning off other homosexuals in the community with their actions. Right? And again, right? Why do you need access to other people's kids so badly? You know, that is something. That is something that I'm just going to ask the uncomfortable question. Why is it so important that you have to have access to other people's kids? I have no problem asking that question. I don't care if it makes you fucking uncomfortable. Right? Like, why do you need access to other people's kids so bad? So anyway, NicMercs, who is a dad, by the way, who is likely, especially if you have a son, and let's not get into what's happening with misandric teachers. I have done a video that is up at my Rumble and my Odyssey and my BitChute called Misandric Teachers, where you have to not only make sure that you're not dealing, if you have a boy, you have to make sure that you not only do you not have transgenders trying to indoctrinate your kids, but you also have to be on the lookout to make sure that you don't have a closeted feminist or an outright feminist who hates boys just because they were born boys to deal with. But I digress, right? You know, the issue here, and this is something that happens with all totalitarian governments, they have to keep expanding. They have to go into new territory. They have to keep pushing, because if they don't keep consuming new territory, they will eventually turn and start to feed upon themselves, because their gluttony, for lack of a better word, their greed, you know, they don't know anything about sustaining themselves within their own society. They have to keep consuming. So they have to keep spreading, and they keep spreading. And this is what happened. I mean, this whole thing with this crazy leftism started out in communities that were very, very strongly leftist, like the atheist community, for instance, and Hollywood, and places, and academia, and places that always traditionally leaned leftwards to a strong degree in the first place. Then they started getting into other communities that were sort of like left, but not too left. The environmental community was strangely enough, was one of the last ones to fall. But when it did fall, it went with a massive thud. Now, though, and then they kind of went into the communities that really didn't care. But now they're having to start to go into communities and groups and organizations that are hostile to them, that don't want them in there, that don't want, I mean, my personal point of view, even as an atheist, my personal point of view on religion is that my personal day-to-day existence is not threatened by somebody who goes to church on Sunday. It doesn't matter. I don't go to church. The fact that this guy wants to go to church on Sunday, hey, more power to him. I'll see you when you get out of church, but I'm not going in there with you because I don't believe in God. That being said, you know, that was also my point of view on gay marriage. You know, they're not marrying me. It doesn't matter to me. It's not inflicting anything on my personal space. So what does it matter? Now, at the time when gay marriage became the law of the land, I mean, I had conservatives jumping down my throat because it was sort of like, well, I mean, gays are getting married, so what, right? Like, who cares, right? And I got a few people on the right jumping down my throat over that. At the point, they were mentioning the slippery slope, and they were right. It was a slippery slope, and that slippery slope has now reached the point where they're starting to go for the kids. To quote Andrew Tate, which is where I heard this, you do not, as a gay person, have the ability to reproduce. And again, take your fucking trans man bullshit and shove it up your ass. Right? If they're transitioned into a man and they originally had a uterus when they started and they still have it and they can get pregnant because of it, then they're not fucking men. Okay? They're not. Sorry, they're not. But I mean, yeah, you do not have the ability to reproduce. That is the consequence of making the decision that you made. You no longer have the ability to reproduce. If you are a gay man, you cannot have a baby with another man who was born biologically male. It doesn't work that way. If you're female, you cannot spontaneously self-impregnate. It doesn't work that way. No matter what type of crackpot science that you want to produce. And I'm going to point out something here, and I'm going to bring up Goddard's Law in regards to this very topic, right? There are plenty of cases of bot science in the past, and there were plenty of scientists in both communist Russia and in Nazi Germany who were quite willing to toe the government line on things like race theory, on things like collectivism, etc., and were quite willing to pay in people's lives to see these scientific theories disproven or brought to reality, and finding out that they didn't work and causing the deaths of thousands of people to do it. This is not the first time that science has been bought. We're staring down the pipes at a potential mass die-off because of vaccines, because people were willing to corrupt the science in order to line the pockets of big pharma. Okay? This is not something that's new. There is bot science. Now, getting back to my original Andrew Tate quote, right? They do not have the ability to reproduce, which means you can't have kids. I mean, there's some places where gay couples are allowed to adopt kids, and there was a particular case just a few months ago where this gay couple were selling their children off as for prostitution. That is not a reflection on all gay couples everywhere. There's also a case which I covered, which was really dark, which I believe was 293, where this lesbian couple adopted a baby boy in Brazil and abused him to death because he was a boy. So don't try to convince me that homosexual couples are somehow more moral or caring, okay? Because they're not. There have been some pretty despicable homosexuals throughout the years. Cecil Rhodes, Ernst Rome of the brown shirts immediately spring to mind. So, without that, so you don't have access to kids. You do not have the right to access and enforce your morals onto someone else's kids. You can say what you want about religion, about someone's personal beliefs. If the parent allows you to do it, fine. But you do not and are not enshrined to have access to someone else's kids to enforce your values and your beliefs upon them. And the fact that you have to rely on the state to artificially enforce that point of view onto someone else, and to try to declare stuff like parental rights as far right, or to label individuals fighting for their kids as potential domestic terrorists in order for you to get your point across, well, that's just plain wrong. I don't care. I'm not religious, right? But I mean, I will freely admit that I have a very strong libertarian aspect to my character. And yeah, no, you do not get the right to enforce, I do not get the right to enforce my point of view on anyone else. Specifically, nobody else's children. So, but I mean, they are willing, even, say, for instance, with this soft parental rights bill that they passed in New Brunswick, they're willing to say that that is hate. The media is willing to lie and say that, oh, well, they're against diversity and they're attempting to wipe the gay community off the map because they're defending their kids' rights, and et cetera, et cetera. And they're willing to lie about it. And because they're willing to lie about it, something as simple as what NicMercs said, which is why the original point of what I was saying, all NicMercs said was leave the children alone. Seriously, leave them alone. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But Activision thought there was something wrong with it, and they took his skin off their platform because he said that. Now, let's get into Activision. This is not the first rodeo for Activision. Activision has done some pretty screwed up stuff around Blizzard and wokeism and has gotten themselves in trouble before. I don't think they were expecting to step on the landmine that they were expecting to step on, but they chose to do it to themselves. If there was a company in the gaming industry that was going to do it, it was probably going to be Activision. I tried to remember the specific issue, but I believe Blizzard Games got themselves into some serious heat probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago over something woke themselves. Blizzard is owned by Activision. This is not their first rodeo. And again, this time the line's been crossed. This time they took it too far. This time they started going after the kids. And Activision decided to take action against a guy who said 4 words: leave the kids alone. That's all he said. He didn't say anything about killing transgenders or gays. He didn't say anything about putting them into camps. He didn't say anything about that thinking that the gay and lesbian lifestyle was somehow disgusting, that trans were disgusting people. All he said was leave the kids alone. And Activision chose to side with the groomers. Not their first rodeo. This time they took it too far. Activision, yeah, you're getting exactly what you deserve. NicMercs will be around long after Activision has gone under. Activision, just like Bud Light, just like Target, just like some of the other companies that have done stuff, some of these companies are never coming back. Okay? This is the really weird part, and this is where I'm going to finish this section off. This is the really weird part. Activision remembers what happened with Gamergate. They know what is going on, and they chose, just like Lauren Southern did in topic number 1, they knew what was going to happen in the gaming community when they did this, but they went ahead and did it anyway, thinking that it was going to be the same old. They didn't see what was going on with Bud Light. They didn't see what was going on with Target. They didn't see what was going on with a few other companies, and they stepped in it. And not surprised in the least that it was Activision that did step in it.
Hello viewers, we are finally seeing common sense prevail way outside what we've been seeing from the disgraceful Trudeau liberals, the shameful exploiters of commotion and climate leftist alarmists from the US, as well as the hypocritical mainstream media. Despite the fiery chaos messing up the province of Alberta, as an unrelenting wildfire season wreaks havoc like never before, Danielle Smith remains fearless, and she will now summon all available resources to investigate the serious threats of intentional fires that are logically believed is being set across the province, given over 10 confirmed cases of arson have been reported so far. Smith declared that her provincial government would seek assistance by hiring arson investigators from outside the province to ensure neutrality and fairness, a move you don't see much from Trudeau's government. Smith's decision is following the unseasonably early occurrence of the wildfires and the devastating consequences they brought in their wake to Alberta as a whole. The fires in the province reached a critical point in early May, catching both residents and authorities off guard, as this was typically a period when provincial firefighters underwent training exercises to enhance their firefighting skills. However, the sudden outbreak of fires forced them to redirect their efforts toward battling the raging infernos that threaten communities and vast expanses of land. And amidst the chaos and destruction, reports began to emerge suggesting that some of the fires were intentionally set by arsonists. Smith expressed her deep concern over this disturbing revelation in her recent interview on Thursday. According to her, she could clearly see the growing number of stories related to arson and emphasized the need for thorough investigations to bring the culprits to justice. At the same time, the baffling mystery surrounding the fires heightened the urgency for a comprehensive investigation. One of the most alarming aspects of the situation was the presence of nearly 175 fires with unknown causes. Logically, while some fires can be attributed to specific incidents like railway accidents, lightning strikes, or careless campfires, it is highly unusual to encounter such a significant number of fires without any identifiable origin. Reinforcing Smith's decision, it turns out also that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Pictou County, Nova Scotia, have announced that they are investigating 3 fire scenes as arson cases. The Mounties reported that they responded to a call of a structure fire on Highway 4 in Alma on Friday earlier this month at 1:30 a.m. However, that fire was extinguished by the local volunteer fire department. And about an hour later, a second fire was reported in Granvin on Granton-Abercrombie Road. Apparently, that the fire took off from a green bin that had ignited. Similarly, a third fire was reported a short time later in Mount William on Mount William Road. And in this case, the law enforcement authorities learned that recycling bags had been set on fire on the side of. And it doesn't end there. Police officers have also announced their active search for a suspected arsonist following a fire that occurred in a Grande Prairie back alley. Witnesses reported seeing a man dressed in black with a white shirt around his shoulder igniting the fire before calmly walking away from the scene. Meanwhile, the ferociously launched investigation against the arsonist also followed another troubling arson incident in Parkland County. The county's Twitter account had recently shared information about 4 suspicious fires along Highway 16 within 5 days, located just a short drive from the provincial capital of Edmonton. And in light of these occurrences, authorities urge Canadians to remain vigilant and report any suspicious behavior to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police by dialing 911 and aiding the investigations and preventing further devastation. But still, as the wildfires continue to ravage Alberta, the situation remains grim. As of Thursday, a staggering 72 wildfires were still ongoing, although this number had decreased from the initial count over 100. The severity of the situation was further magnified as wildfires began to emerge in other regions, including Quebec, New Brunswick, and even parts of the United States. And in a grim manner, the spread of these fires exposed millions of Americans and Canadians to hazardous levels of smoke, further compounding the environmental and health concerns arising from the wildfires. Apparently, seeing the whole trio of President Joe Biden, Ocasio-Cortez, and Justin Trudeau once again jumping at the opportunity to use a tragedy to advance their political agenda. It is no question that we can't completely rule out the high possibility that radical groups are burning down Canada too. Talk about these enviro-fascists, disgruntled natives, and of course some newly arrived radicals. And it is just still really amusing how the Trudeau liberals can't figure out how to harness satellites and other sophisticated technologies to monitor and manage the forests, but have endless funds to fight fires. Well, of course, that wouldn't be so surprising anymore knowing that these radical leftist climate change extremists are definitely going to do whatever they can to reinforce their fable, even if it means setting the country on a blazing inferno. However, it is rather admirable to see Premier Danielle Smith invoking a sense of unity and resilience in Alberta while reasserting the provincial government's determination to overcome this immense challenge. Undoubtedly, at a time when a clown federal government along with its alarmist legacy media exploit the tragedy and majorly blame the invisible gods of climate change for the wildfires spread in the country, while advocating more carbon tax, Albertans boast of real leadership that's committed to finding out what really happened and serving as a beacon of hope in the face of one of the most catastrophic wildfire seasons Canada had ever witnessed. What's your opinion on Danielle Smith's decision on carrying out an arson investigation into the wildfires with no known cause? We would love to also see your thoughts with us in the comment section. Also, we've now finally launched Street Politics USA, where we cover global news and news updates in the United States for our audience. The link is down in the video description. Please check it out, subscribe, and like our videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Turning over to Canada, where the western province of Alberta has declared a state of emergency over out-of-control wildfires. At least 100 wildfires were reported in the province over the weekend, forcing more than 29,000 people to evacuate their homes. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has described the situation as unprecedented. Oil companies in the province have temporarily shut down operations. Authorities have warned that some fires may grow as a result of expected high winds. The neighboring province of British Columbia has also reported 4 major wildfires. Officials have issued evacuation orders in affected areas.
Danielle Smith and the Alberta wildfires. Okay, now, every year there is a region on the planet. Last year it was Australia, sometimes it's the American West. A couple of years ago it was California. There's always a particular region of the world during the summer months where the wildfires are much heavier and much more destructive than they normally would be. Now, I was living in Edmonton in 2016 when they had the big wildfire up in Fort Mac, and I had to actually go and work up in Fort Mac after that wildfire had been put out on a couple of occasions. Now, this year, the big fire is in high level, but there are multiple other small fires happening in northern Alberta even as we speak, and there were even some, I won't say right within Edmonton, but fairly close to Edmonton. Now, Alberta was bad enough, but now you have fires springing up all over Canada. Now, I was one of the videos I downloaded, which I'm going to be including in the feed for this. One of the comments on this particular video is that an evil leader will watch his country burn so that he can rule over the ashes. Now, you're seeing Joe Biden, AOC, Justin Trudeau, various leftist leaders all over North America attempting to pass this off as an environmental issue. Now, here's the really weird part about it. I don't know the exact numbers, but there appears to be a disproportionately large number of the forest fires that are currently happening in northern Alberta, which appear to have a human cause. Or, more specifically, an arson backing to what happened to them. Now, how many of them? Well, it would appear to be a disproportionate number. There's a number of them where they don't know what started the fire. Although, again, right, there are some very good arson investigators. And while maybe Quebec and Ontario and Manitoba won't bring in these arson investigators, Danielle Smith has decided that she needed to do it. Why did she need to do it? Well, I think probably because the idiots in Ottawa, specifically Justin Trudeau, decided that the wildfires in Alberta were a good cause to grandstand about the environment, and also a good reason to take pot shots at her and the Conservatives. Now, when I look at this situation, when I see what is going on, I'm still remembering what happened with the truckers and how Trudeau treated the truckers and how he very recently had his good buddy give him a pass on what happened with the Chinese money and the Chinese connection with the Chinese election interference, and how Jagmeet Singh is refusing to hold Justin's feet to the fire over this. So Justin has been feeling, and it's getting worse with him. He's getting headier and headier and more egotistical and more arrogant, and he's looking like he was never his father in the first place. Like, he was never the caliber of Pierre Trudeau in the first place at any point. But it's gotten worse and worse and worse with him. Danielle Smith is not going to hand over an easy political victory to Justin this time. Because given the track record that Justin has, including, by the way, the rather embarrassing public gaffe that he did with the Italian Prime Minister, and then the somewhat less embarrassing gaffe that he did with the Polish Prime Minister or President. You know, like, I mean, he's gotten so heady that he's like literally telling other heads of state how they should run their governments. I mean, he is that full of himself. So the question is, and by the way, threatening to nationalize provincial resources, threatening to arrest Western premiers if they do not toe the line on Ottawa's energy policy, and using the media to push this agenda. The question needs to be asked. And I think this is a legit question, given what I have seen out of Justin Trudeau and what I have seen out of the power brokers in Ottawa. Would the people in Ottawa go out and intentionally start fires, coincidentally, of course, in the one province which has been actively opposing him vehemently, to make Danielle Smith look bad? The answer is, unfortunately, yes. Now, in saying that, I am not saying that Ottawa is behind us, and I'm not saying that there are actors in Ottawa that came out to Alberta with the intention of starting fires to make the provincial government look bad. But I can't say that they didn't do it either. And when I say that, and I look at the forest fire, and considering the fact that I may actually end up having to go up there with potentially with a new job in the near future, you know, the environmental grandstanding, the intention of trying to make Danielle Smith look good. I mean, you've really left Danielle Smith no other choice but to hire arson investigators. Now, are they going to find something? Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But Trudeau's not, I mean, Trudeau only has so many lives. Something is going to break. Like, Jagmeet Singh cannot keep even though they're both Soros puppets, Jagmeet Singh is not the entire New Democrat Party. Right? He is going to start facing some heat inside his own party if he continues to look the other way on what Justin is doing. Now, again, I am not saying that Justin or anybody inside Ottawa is doing this, but I cannot say with absolute certainty that it's not happening either. And because I cannot say that it's not happening with absolute certainty either, in given how the government is acting, which, by the way, only reinforces the possibility that maybe somebody in Ottawa is actually doing this on purpose and not. I could see Danielle Smith having to take the response with the intel that she's been given in order to potentially investigate Ottawa for doing something like this, because the people in Ottawa are fully capable of doing something like this. They are. And because they are fully capable of doing something like this, you have to investigate them. You have to look. Right? And maybe they find something, maybe they don't. But here's just some actual proven facts, right? The coincidental start of large wildfires within the only province that is actively opposing Ottawa and what Justin Trudeau is doing, and the way that the people in Ottawa are acting because of it, and the way that the greater globalist community is also acting because of it, does not make their case that they are not involved somehow. You know, and yeah, okay, I understand I'm sounding a little tinfoil hatty here, but we're talking about my backyard here. Like, I've worked in northern Alberta. I live in Edmonton. Okay? Like, this is directly affecting me. I've had to breathe the smoke from the wildfires when it's drifted into the city. Okay? Like, this is not far from where I live. You know, and, well, I am very happy that Danielle Smith chose to do this action. She's probably going to be, and I'm having to imagine DeSantis is having to deal with the exact same thing where he was. Danielle Smith is going to be a very embattled premier for her whole 4 years here. Now, I don't think the media is going to have a whole lot of respectability left in 4 years. But based upon some of the stuff I'm seeing, they're trying really, really hard. Remember, I was talking about what Twitch did on the last part. You know, I can't dismiss this. So, here's the question for you. In light of the limited evidence that I have put out in front of me, given the fact that I know that Ottawa is capable of it, what do you, the listener, think? I would love to hear what you think. And yeah, you want to call me a tinfoil hatter for proposing this? Fine, call me a tinfoil hatter. I really don't care.
Secret Service, look at that. Secret Service. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. People are chasing the car. Secret Service is running.
Around this clearly high enough that it's not just Donald Trump who has to take his security very seriously when it deals with this case.
Thank you for confirming that Jack Smith was there. Ken Delaney believed he recognized Jack Smith, but he couldn't quite tell from the small monitor that he could see in the overflow room. Police are trying to physically clear people off the road right now. There are literally no barriers between the sidewalks and the SUV.
Trump now officially leaving the federal courthouse after his arraignment here in Miami, and it looks like a protester, a Trump hater, a never Trumper is out there protesting this, and it looks like he's dressed up in an old school jail outfit, obviously saying that Trump needs to go to jail, and he is just obviously confused, and now it looks like he's getting out of control once again. Whatever has happened, it takes a bitch slap from a Trump supporter as well, and it looks like this senior soy boy is resisting arrest, and now they are going to make him make out with the ground involuntarily. And it looks like he's dressed up for the occasion as he gets shipped off to jail because they don't fuck around here in Miami.
So now we get into the last topic of the night. Yep, Trump has been indicted again. We all know what this is about, just like the Alvin Bragg prosecution. The aim here is quite simple, and I mean, the timing of this is not a coincidence, right? Just throw everything they've got. This reeks of just throw everything they've got at Donald Trump and hope that something sticks. You know, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if they attempted to throw up the same type of gag order on this particular Florida prosecution that they did with the one in New York, which is specifically designed to prevent him from campaigning properly. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they attempted to do that exact same thing, just like they tried to do in New York. Now, the use of the state law enforcement agencies to prosecute political opponents. You know, I can see Justin Trudeau, as things begin to unspool. I can see he's already done it against the truckers. Now, I have seen some low-level stuff like Maxime Bernier getting arrested in Manitoba at one point, but I haven't seen Justin go out and I have seen Justin use the RCMP here to intimidate political opponents, but not actually engage in malicious prosecution, except with the possibility of the of the convoy organizers. The convoy, I think Justin is really pissed off at the convoy organizers. They made him look bad. They made him look really bad. They made him look like a coward. Somebody as self-absorbed and narcissistic as Justin Trudeau cannot handle something like that. But getting into this is specific again. Like this, for anybody who's not suffering from full-on flake-out Trump derangement syndrome can see what this is. This is a politically motivated prosecution designed with the sole intent and purpose of making any attempt that he might make to run as president difficult again. Because Trump represents a legitimate threat, and there really is nobody on the Democrat side that actually stands a legit chance against him. Nobody. Like, there's not a single solitary person on the Democrat side. There's no visible hero on a white horse coming up out of the blue to challenge Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. In fact, I can think of several Republicans right now that would probably make better presidents than the most qualified Democrat candidate would, of which I would have to say that Kennedy is probably the front runner. The issue that we're looking at here is that, this probably won't be the last. This whole thing, and again, this whole situation with Mar-a-Lago and those documents, again, there's enough legal loopholes that this is not going to hold up. The only reason that they're doing this is that it just makes it more difficult for Trump and again, right? It's like they saw what happened with Trump when Bragg brought that prosecution against him in New York. It actually made him more popular. And knowing that, the Department of Justice went ahead and are launching a second criminal prosecution against Trump anyway, even though the first one is likely backfiring in a really bad way. And again, right, there's no other explanation for it other than willful ignorance and knowing knowing that the only thing they have to benefit out of this is that there's an off chance that they might derail Trump. The issue is, and this is probably one of the reasons why DeSantis had to announce his presidency, his run, because DeSantis has to be ready to stand up and pick up the torch on the off chance that Trump somehow is actually found guilty and is actually sent to jail. Now, will they resort to potential assassination of Donald Trump? Yeah, I think they might just go that far. I think these prosecutions that they are aiming at Trump is part of the reason why DeSantis had to step up. Because DeSantis has to be ready to pick up the torch if Trump is somehow taken down. And there is a possibility that this might actually work. That's the only reason that there's no... They saw... Again, this is something that I'm seeing over and over again. Like, they saw what happened to Trump's popularity when they chose to prosecute him in New York. It backfired. So what do? They go and do the same thing anyway. Because the only reason I can do it is because they're insane, and the perceived value of bogging Trump down in needless prosecutions takes away his ability to campaign. Which means, as a result, is that Ron DeSantis has to be able to step into the gap and pick up the slack if Trump is somehow taken down or taken out. That's the only logical explanation as to what is going on. This is an absolute circus, and if you think it's it's going to affect every area of every cultural area in North America and the West over the next 12 to 18 months. The manosphere, for better or worse, is going to get a huge boost, but there is going to be also some irreparable damage that is going to put... Well, it's like anything else. Something that gets bigger, you're going to see more of. Right? In a strange kind of way, what is happening with the conservatives and the tradcons in their attempts to tap into the manosphere to use as a political tool, which, by the way, I kind of figured was going to happen in 2024 because the manosphere is a politically viable tool, and I kind of figured that it would be by 2024, and it is. This is going to affect everything. And you still have individuals out there who are still not over 2016, that are still so fucking stunned stupid that they would wear striped prison clothes and run out in front of the Trump motorcade and do what he did and just and do this. Like, if you have an individual who's willing to jump out in front of a motorcade, and this is an actual quote from Dominic Santana. I was running away from the mob that was hitting me, and I just dodged for my safety, and all of a sudden there's the motorcade, and there's my sign, and I got tackled down. Simple, Santana said. No. Because I'm posting up the video right at the start of this. You can see what Santana was doing. He was not running away from the Trump mob when he did this. He ran right at that vehicle, stepped right in front of that vehicle, and held it up. The ironic part is that Trump is a good statistical probability that Trump wasn't even in that vehicle. That's the really stupid part about what Dominic Santana did. And of course he got hauled away. Kudos to him for being brave like that, but the guy's a figure. Dominic, you're not a fucking hero. You're not a fucking idiot. No matter what the leftist establishment media tells you, you're a fucking idiot. Okay? And let's get into this, right? Because they're going to pull out every single conceivable stop that they can pull out this time, right? They have even gone so far as to make it okay to start talking about elections being stolen on YouTube again, because there's a very strong possibility, and they know this already, and we're not even halfway through 2023 yet, that there's a very good possibility that they're going to lose. Biden is mentally incompetent. There's nobody in the Democrat Party that has the ability to do that's got the ability to lead the nation. Like, all of the leadership is coming out of the Republican Party right now. Sorry, and I hate to say this, man, because up until a few years ago, I would have voted for the Democrats. By and large, I'm still center left. And it blows my mind that they just keep making, I've said this before on the show, and I'm going to say it again. Right? The day when stuff like this doesn't just cause me to shake my head and just go, and I'm at the point where I'm like going, yeah, whatever, and then I become totally indifferent and jaded to all of this stuff, that'll be the day when I stop doing this podcast, when I stop doing this show. That day is not today. Like, in no way am I flabber, in no way am I jaded over what Dominic Santana did. I'm not in any way surprised that the Democrat establishment is so stupid that they would go and repeat the same mistake, even though it has failed time and again, because it's the only tool that they've got in their arsenal. And they're willing to take a chance and potentially, possibly even destroy the United States as a nation. To do, potentially, at least theoretically, what Justin Trudeau is doing in Canada right now, to burn the country down so that they can rule over its ashes. Yes, you're potentially looking at that in the United States as well. The only difference between the United States and Canada is that there's a lot more to burn. And, again, I don't know all the ins and outs of this potential second indictment that Trump is dealing with. But again, right, from what I'm seeing, from unbiased sources, and, of course, Joseph Kennedy Jr. had the potential chance to take the high road on this and chose to toe the Democrat line, which doesn't look good for him. And he's the only legit contender to Biden in the Democrat Party right now that has even a slight chance of knocking off Trump. And he still chose to not take the high road to insert himself in on this, knowing what's happened before. So they're not going to learn from their mistakes. They're going to keep doing them. I can almost virtually guarantee you're going to see another version of George Floyd next year. You're going to see a lot of grandstanding around the transgender issue. You're going to see a lot more fear-mongering, and you're also going to see more and more and more companies just go, well, you know what, ESG be damned. I'm here to make money. I'm not here so that ESG can continuously undermine my stock accounts so that they can keep buying me up and controlling me to force me to make even more stupid mistakes. And, well, by the way, when it comes to BlackRock and whatnot, I can assure you there's some very good minds out there right now figuring out a way to undermine BlackRock and to undermine ESG. And they will figure out how to do it at some point. You can bet the farm on that one. Right? If Trump wins in 2024, And I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say, yeah, Trump's gonna win, like I said back in 2020. I'm not gonna say that. But I mean, if he wins in 2024, I can guarantee you he will not be anywhere near as forgiving or naive about the apparatus of government on his second term. And by the way, it will be his second term, so he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected. So, I mean, he's going to do stuff in the second term to govern, whether you like it or not. You know, and, well, you know, what can I say? I mean, the circus, that was the indictment. Of course, Trump pleaded not guilty. That was absolutely no surprise. It was a media circus. Also no big surprise. Massive number of supporters for Trump. There was also Dominic Santana. He's a fucking idiot. And he is, in a strange kind of way, a representation of the fucking idiocy of the left and of the mainstream media. And you're going to see more like him in the next few months. It's a circus. It's a clown world. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. So this concludes my first ever solo episode of the Red Pill Nation. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know. Do you want to see more of this? Do you want to see less of this? Do you want to just hear my beautiful, wonderful voice talking to you all the time, or do you want me to? I mean, I will freely admit I have a preference for having a long running show, but at the same time, right? I'm looking at the timeline on this one, and this one ran a lot shorter, and probably because it was just me, and I can be a lot more organized, and I can show you a lot more, and I can download a lot more parallel content and use that to highlight some of the stuff that I'm talking about. This was an interesting, unique, and different show. Let me know whether you like it or not, whether you want to see more of it, whether you don't. Just remember, and I have to make an effort here to start shilling a little bit more. My apologies for doing it. But if even 1% of you gave me $1 a month on YouTube, not on YouTube, for on Patreon for this, or at Subscribestar for this, you know, I make no secret about this. My aim is to be able to do this full time and not have to worry about getting doxxed or having somebody find me and causing me to lose my job or something like that. So, yeah, help a guy out, please. If you know any good commercial sponsors, send them my way. But let me know what you thought about this particular show. Let me know whether you liked it or not. If you like it, I might do more. I may do more of them. Because I have to start getting used to doing the show by myself anyway at some point. So yeah, this was unique and different. And you might see more of it. You might not. Let me know what you think. Just remember, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, MGTOW TV, Brighteon, Facebook, Minds, Gab, MeWe, Getter. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this show, and maybe I'll be doing more of them, maybe I won't, but this was definitely different. Thank you very much, and I will see you